There we go. After the most technical difficulties, I think we're good to go. You can dismiss both of these. Cool. Should we do intros? I'm going to have you start, Magdalena.
Okay. I'm Magdalena. I'm one of the AmeriCorps at Degrees of Change this year.
My name is Austin Colburn. I'm another one of the AmeriCorps at Degrees of Change.
My name is Jaden Zwick. I am the Tacoma Seattle Program Coordinator for Act 6.
My name is Taylor Tibbs, and I'm the Program Site Director for Tacoma Seattle Act 6. Thank you all for your patience. Just as a reminder, we're recording this session. It'll be available online, if not at the end of today, tomorrow. This is a extended, in-depth online info session for the Act 6 program. I'm going to be taking us through the PowerPoint, which you should see on your screen. Jaden is manning the chat to make sure we catch any additional questions. We do have a few people who needed to jump from Skype for Business to Microsoft Teams. So people on Skype for Business, Jaden will be keeping a lookout for you all, hoping that you'll meet us online soon. But if not, this will be available as a resource for everyone. Sound good? So we're here today to talk about these big three major things and then to answer questions too. So we'll talk about the Act 6 program. What is Act 6? What are we even asking you to do? What's happening? Why is it happening all the time? We'll talk about scholarship details. So you've heard a lot about our full tuition, full need urban leadership scholarship, but you may be asking yourself, what does that scholarship entail? How is it decided? Who gets full tuition and who gets full need? And then we have some next steps in our selection process. We'll talk about what's happening right now, but what will be happening in January and then in February, all the way through March, when we finally select all of our last folks. So a little bit about our training program. Our training program begins in March after students are selected, and it goes all the way through the end of July. It's a high commitment program. We ask that all of our students meet with us weekly for 3-hour meetings with all of our applicants. So that's about 35-ish folks gathering together. We have some weekend retreats and conferences, additional visits to your college campus, family workshops, social events, and then some summer-long events that mostly are just for fun and bonding. Some important things to know about training: we have dinner at every training. We make sure you're really well fed. We have dinner together just so we can bond and check in and say hi to each other. We have some other fun components. They're not always super intense type things going on, but we do run it like a college seminar. We have about anywhere between 15 to 16 trainings throughout the summer. They are all required, but we know that you all are doing many different things. And so if you can't make it to all 15 or 16 trainings, that's fine. Just let us know in advance. We have like a 3 grace system. So students are allowed to miss a training, miss an assignment, or come late to a training, and we'll excuse up to 3 of those incidences. So maybe you need to be on vacation for a particular amount of time. And if that's the case, just use one of your grace periods, or you can ask us and you'll be excused. We have all of the training dates available in advance. So right now we have a big calendar with all those dates on. We can make those available to students as they need them. They will definitely be available for our phase 3 participants. But if you have any questions or needs or things you're worried about throughout the year, we'll have those things available for you too. Anything else you want to add about training, Jaden?
Training is a really enjoyable part of the program, both because you get to become really good friends with the other people who get the scholarship, but also because it's such a great opportunity to learn more about yourself, your leadership, and to prepare you for what will your life be like when you get to college. So it's definitely something to look forward to and shouldn't feel like an additional burden by any means as a part of our program.
Yeah, we find that training is really the thing that helps our students the most when they're on campus. Through training, we build relationships with them. They build relationships with each other. When they arrive on campus, we can review those things we learned in training. And we'll talk a bit about the themes too. So here are the themes of training: vision, leadership, service, diversity, community preparation, transformation. Those are all of them. So when we talk about these themes, we're not just talking about one theme per day or one theme per training. We're talking about combinations of all these things. who are you as a person? How have your experiences brought you to this point? How are you going to use your values, your commitment to community, your transformational mindset when you get on your college campus? We'll talk about some other practical things too. For example, how do I talk to professors, right? Professors are incredibly different people than your high school teachers. Sometimes your professor is a super genius but has never taught a class before, and so you might be interacting with some people who don't have the best interpersonal skills. Sometimes you'll need to know how to navigate office hours. Maybe you've never gone abroad or left the country before, and so you want to study abroad, but how do you get those resources met? We'll talk about study themes. We'll talk about negotiating things with your roommate. We'll talk about all these other practical skills for you to be successful in college too. Anything to add?
Not that I can think of.
Oops. So last things about Act 6, we are a faith-based initiative. Our foundations, our program values, and why we do what we do is motivated by Christian commitments, and our commitment to exploring not just the Christian perspective, but all faith perspectives. And we do a little bit of that in our training themes. You, as a potential Act 6 scholar, do not have to have any particular faith at all. You could have been born in a church and have never left the building, or you can have never walked outside a church before or held a Bible. It's totally fine. Wherever you're coming from is where we want to meet you. We actually want our cohort, our group of students this year, to reflect the perspectives of people we have in our community. And so we have people from many different faiths, many different backgrounds. The exception, though, is Northwest University. Northwest does require a statement of commitment to the Christian faith. We do ask that students who are thinking about going to Northwest be practicing their Christian faith in some way that's tangible for them. It's a requirement while you're on campus at NU to be practicing your Christian faith, to be going to chapel, to be going to church. So if that's not something you want to do, if you don't want that to be a requirement, it probably isn't the best fit for you. But if that is you already, then it's an amazing place to find yourself when you're getting your undergrad degree. We really want students who are willing to engage in these conversations regardless of where they are. So if you've never read the Bible before, we still want to hear, what do you have to say about these values that we connect with the Christian faith? Or where else have you seen these values show up in your life if you're not a Christian, if you're Buddhist, if you're Muslim? Where are you coming from? And how is where you're coming from going to contribute to the change we want to see overall? Jaden, you went to Gonzaga.
Yes, I did.
So Gonzaga is a Catholic Jesuit institution. What was that like? Why would you, or what would you point out about faith at Gonzaga that was unique to that school?
At Gonzaga, they talk a lot about, and specifically within university ministry, they always make it clear that they are not there to enforce their beliefs on students. And while there are a lot more resources for Christian students because we're a Catholic school, at the same time, they believe that whether you walk onto Gonzaga's campus, a Muslim, a Buddhist, agnostic, or Christian, their hope is that you leave Gonzaga a better Muslim or Buddhist or agnostic or Christian person. And I think that's something that as a program Act 6, we also are really committed to, is making sure that we have the opportunity to have you explore your beliefs and your spirituality, but not by necessarily putting parameters around that or like making sure that you have to believe in any particular system, but more so that you're willing to grow spiritually and or at least engage in dialogues around spirituality.
Yeah, awesome. So we're going to jump into the scholarship in a minute. So talking about what is full tuition, what is full need, what does the scholarship entail, and how does it work? But before we do that, we'll go through some questions about the program. So Austin and Magdalena are here. They're familiar with Act 6. Magdalena and Austin, do you find that there are any frequent questions that students have about the program or the faith component?
I like to talk about PLU just because I went there.
Yeah.
And also it's called Pacific Lutheran University, which tends to make people think it's super Lutheran, for lack of a better descriptor. But in practice, I feel like it's one of our least like religiously influenced schools in a way that we partner with. So I like to dispel that fear because they do have chapel that you can go to, but it's not required. They do require you to take one Christian traditions class and one non-Christian tradition, which is only 2 classes throughout your whole college career. So it's really not that much of a religious requirement. And I do think it's pretty cool in that it also pushes you to think about other perspectives because you take one Christian one, but you also might take like a Southeast Asian religions class or something else like that.
Yeah, good question. I think we get questions about faith the most. And then just to reiterate the program logistics, like we're not a pay as you go training program. So if you are missing a handful of trainings, we're not going to dock you your scholarship funds. We will ask you though to do a makeup assignment. So sometimes that's a reflection. Sometimes that means that you are responsible for coordinating the first fun activity for your cadre, your cohort when you're on campus. So just know that you can't disappear. Emergencies happen. We definitely know that, car things, work things, family things. So one of the things we prioritize, we'd like you to practice with us for the sake of your college education, is open communication with the people who are going to be a part of your support network. So letting just as you let your boss know if you can't make it to work, let us know if you can't make it to training. Just as you let us know if you can't make it to training, let your professor know you can't make it to class. And it's all about reinforcing these structures that are going to be good habits for you long term. All right, so the scholarship. Let's talk about full tuition first. No matter what, ACSICS will cover full tuition and mandatory student fees. Mandatory student fees are the facilities fee for the college. What were the other fees we were talking about earlier?
Like student activities.
Student activities, you want paper, you want Wi-Fi, like all those different things that have to happen on colleges too. You are responsible for paying those things, but if you're an ACSICS scholar, we will cover mandatory student fees and tuition as a part of those expenses. Tuition increases every year. While you're in college, I know while I was in college, tuition definitely increased every year that I was there. Luckily, the ACSICS scholarship will grow as tuition grows and mandatory student fees grow as well. And if your EFC changes, it will also cover tuition. So your EFC is your expected family contribution or expected family costs, money that the government thinks that your family will be able to contribute to your education. So even if you win the lottery tomorrow and you don't need any help paying for college, we can still, and we will still cover tuition and mandatory student fees. So now we have full need, and this is where things get a little bit different. So if you have any questions about this, feel free to email us afterwards or connect with your financial aid officer at your ACSICS college. So full need is defined as your EFC minus the total cost of attendance. So for some of you, your EFC is $5,000. So if that's you, ACSICS will not only cover your full tuition and mandatory student fees, will cover everything up until your EFC2. So while you're still going to be responsible for your EFC, your family will still need to contribute that $5,000. Everything else will be covered by ACSICS and will not be comprised of loans or money that you have to pay back to us or the college. Those packages tend to include a $2,000 or $3,000 work study award. Does someone want to talk about work study?
Sure. Yeah. Work study is kind of like a job where you get paid with like financial aid resources from the government. Work study is cool in that you can kind of work and get the money or get your award as you're able to. And because a lot of times you'll be working on campus for like different departments that, because they're on a college campus, they understand that you're a student first. You can kind of, get like a more flexible schedule than you would if you were working like off campus or working like a regular like traditional job. That being said, you are able to use the money for kind of whatever you need or whatever you want, but we recommend that you use your work study award for things like books or other college-based expenses, or if you need money for transportation or other things like that, that's a good place to pull money from if money's kind of tight.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can use the funds for whatever you want. If you're going to use it for pizza, then that's on you. But again, we'd like you to use it for books, maybe toothpaste. I don't know, things you need for college, things you need for your dorm. Um, that can really change the way that you fund your college education. Another thing to note about WorkStudy is that it's a part of your financial aid package at the beginning of the year. If you choose not to use it at some point during the school year, it could disappear. So it's one of those uh, things you want to take advantage of, if at all possible. So let's talk about what cost of attendance is. So we talk about what college costs. There's not just tuition, which is the price of going to classes and keeping the building running, right? Tuition and mandatory student fees. It also includes room and board, so sleeping and eating on campus, books and supplies, the things you're going to need to do well in your classes, personal expenses. So we talked about toothpaste, deodorant, I don't know, pizza. Sheets for your bed. Like you need all those things, maybe a pillow, maybe you'd not like to sleep on the flat ground if you can help it. And then finally, travel expenses. Maybe you want to visit somebody, your parents, maybe, or maybe you want to go drive to the bank or something. You're going to need gas, travel expenses. All of that adds up to the cost of attendance. In this particular example, it's about 56 grand, the total cost of attendance to go to college. I believe in this example, we used PLU for example. This was last year's PLU cost. So don't use this to evaluate your 2019-20 costs. This is definitely 2018-2019. So determining need. So cost of attendance essentially is the bigger number we're worried about. Need is your EFC taken away from cost of attendance. So if you have $1 and college costs $10, then you need $9. Let's do that with 56 grand, just so that it's extra clear. So you get your EFC from the WASFA or the FAFSA, if you've taken one of those this year. When we did our numbers, when we run our numbers to make our examples, we use the EFC you reported to us in your application. So for some of you, that number may have adjusted since then. If that's the case, then that's okay. Just go back in, you can plug in these same numbers and get an idea of what you can expect to pay for college. Act 6, if you are a full need scholar, ensures that all of your need is met without loans. If your need is less than tuition, though, like let's say you've got enough money to surpass that amount, the scholarship will always cover the minimum of full tuition. Does that make sense, everybody? So regardless of what happens, we're always going to cover tuition, even if you make slightly more than the government thinks you need to cover tuition. So in our first example, we've got a student whose EFC is $3,000. If we do the math, it means they need $53,300. So their Act 6 award is going to be need. So they get $53,300. That particular award for Act 6 covers tuition and room and board. Your family's still responsible for the $3,000 in that example, but typically that $3,000 is personal expenses. So books, personal expenses, travel expenses, toothbrush, toothpaste. Like maybe don't eat out pizza every day. Maybe don't buy new books every single chance you can get. Don't cover your ice cream in gold leaf. Like find smaller ways to make college more affordable if that number seems pretty big to you. And again, that 53 grand is not loans that you have to pay back. Got fun graphics for the second example. So this person, their EFC on the FAFSA is 15 grand. So if we do the math again, it looks like what they need is 41,300. What that means is, if you can remember, tuition in this example was 42,300. So we're going to cover the larger of the two numbers. In this case, tuition, 42 grand, is larger than their need, 41 grand. So we'll cover the larger amount. This award covers tuition, surpasses what they need a little bit. Family's still responsible for the EFC, but again, a chunk of that EFC is room and board, is books, personal expenses. Some ways to cover the cost of room and board, which tends to be a larger expense. How many of you have heard of being a resident assistant? Have any of you been a resident assistant? Want to talk about being an RA and what the benefits are?
Yeah, sure. being an RA is kind of like or being a resident assistant at most campuses. Some colleges might call it something different, but most places it's pretty much the same. So you are given basically like free room and board in exchange for kind of being a sort of like servant leader to the other people living in that residential community. So, you know, along with living with them, you'll kind of like check up on them, making sure that, you know, they're doing everything they need to do to be successful in college according to them, making sure that they're, you know, kind of like living and abiding by, like, you know, the school's like code of conduct or the school's rules, as well as federal law, if, you know, you kind of catch my drift along that, you know, line of thinking. And also doing really cool, like community-based, kind of like bonding activities every or most like semesters, most like quarters, they'll often have like multiple different you know, like events like movie nights or potlucks or things like that to make sure that everyone is, you know, getting engaged and having fun in the place that they're living at.
Yeah.
I miss anything or anything either you want to add?
Nope, that's perfect. Yeah, RA is a good way to cover your room board. I think the only other benefit the RAs at my college had is that they got a room all to themselves because that additional responsibility. So if you're already thinking, I don't want to have a roommate, I don't have time for that, maybe be an RA. You can engage with your community in a different way, provide extra support for folks who live on your floor, but you also get your own space. It is important to know, though, it does come with that additional responsibility. So being responsible, leaning into that type of leadership is going to be essential for being successful in that role. Okay, so here is another, a super big example. This is an example we'll have for you at the phase 3 event. It'll include the numbers you reported to us on your ACCESS application as far as what your EFC is. Up here where it says example, you'll have your number, and then you'll have the college you're attending. And it's the same information we just went over. Cost of attendance, how is that being calculated? Your ACCESS award. Cost of attendance minus your EFC, this will be your particular one here. And then you'll see the number for need and the number for tuition. And then the ACCESS award will be the larger of the two, either need or tuition, whichever number is highest. And then there's a breakdown of kind of where does that money go? Where is it coming from? A lot of students think they're just going to get a check in the mail for $53,000. That's not how it works. We send all that money, or that money is applied directly at the college level. Our scholarships come directly from the university, so they're the ones who have your scholarship in the bank. Money in other places, though, work study, which comes from the government, which you'll earn as you go, so we don't apply it to that aid directly applied to the campus. You decide where this money goes once it comes into you. And then personal expenses, which you'll be paying for as you go along. You get to decide how much to spend on all of those different things. This particular family, for example, if we take up the total cost for the year, what they should expect to pay the college directly to meet those last minute costs, but also what personal expenses the student will need to cover over the next year, we ask them to prepare to pay just under $9,000 for the school year. And so when we think about money that's owed to the college versus money that is personal expenses, money owed to the college, you can get on a payment plan. They can pay it all at once, or they can pay it throughout the year. The student can work over the summer to apply those different things. There's the illusion too that ACCESS scholars don't have any student loans, but some students do decide to take out loans. They'd rather not spend their first year on campus working. So they take out small loans to cushion the first year so they can focus on their studies, but that's completely up to you and your family. All right. Any common questions we've heard about full tuition, full need scholarships, or just the ACCESS scholarship in general that we haven't covered?
What happens if you apply for other major scholarships and also are bringing those with you to your college?
That's a good question. What technically happens is that, well, what typically happens is that the ACCESS scholarship agrees to meet your need throughout the year, and that's it. So if you're bringing in an extra $2,000 scholarship and it goes directly to your college, your ACCESS scholarship shrinks by $2,000. But say the next year, your sophomore year of college, that $2,000 isn't available again, ACCESS will grow to meet that need. You can't, and I wouldn't advise that you go out and apply for $200,000 worth of scholarship expecting to get $150,000 reimbursement check from the college. That's not how it works. Not to my knowledge, that has never happened in the time that I've been working for this program. Typically what it means is that we'll make sure that your need is met regardless of what happens. We don't want you to stop applying for other scholarships, in part because we're so competitive and we know that only 30 potentially students will get selected for Act 6. The more scholarships you apply for, the more organizations you align yourself with, the more people who are willing to fund your education and support you, the better, because you never know what's going to happen. And many students do end up going to Act 6 colleges anyway, but not always as Act 6 scholars. Keep in mind too, there are scholarships available at the university level. We're a university scholarship, so we're available at particular colleges. Other universities have similar awards as well. So you should always look on the website of schools you're interested in and see what they have available that's unique to them and apply for those opportunities especially. Good question. Any others?
You mentioned it briefly, but I would just emphasize again the difference between total cost of attendance and billable costs, because sometimes seeing that total cost of attendance, kids are like, what? I'm going to be billed for that right away? How am I going to cover all that? And like you mentioned, those personal expenses, books, supplies, things like that aren't billed to you right at the beginning of the semester. You can also find ways to cut that price down, but it's also a price that you don't have to worry about right up front. It's something that you're paying for throughout the semester.
Yeah. So in this example, if you look down here at the ode to college line, the student will pay $5,200 or almost $5,300 over the course of the school year. And that these other costs, personal expenses, travel, books, those are things that you will pay as you go, but you get to decide when you buy them. I was an English major when I was in college. I maybe spent maximum 1 year or one semester $200 for books, but I also got maybe 15 or 16 different books. If you are a science major, you might be paying for lab materials, you might be paying for heavy duty textbooks that you're actually going to want to keep. So just make sure that you're saving money for the beginnings of each of your semesters to buy the supplies that you need. A lot of students will wait until they can find the cheapest or fastest or easiest option. Start looking for those things in advance, because once school year starts, you want to have those things ready for you. And there are other ways to find things that you need. If you're like, I really need pens, but I'm trying to save up for books, go look on your campus, ask upperclassmen where you can get some of those other resources met, right? So like, don't drop hundreds of dollars a semester on coffee if you've got a dorm person who makes a really good latte. Just become friends with them, figure it out, negotiate those things, learn some skills that you can share, become a community, all that good stuff. Any other questions before we close it? I think we're almost done. Cool. So next steps in our selection process. So phase 2 has been going on through the month of December. You all were at our phase 2 event at the beginning of December. We're taking those scores and adding them to the reading committee scores, and reading committees are happening as we speak. Folks are reading your application, they're taking really good notes. We'll bring your phase 2 information to them at some point in December, and then we'll have a larger conversation at the beginning of January to select our final 60-ish semifinalists. Decisions are really difficult. They're super complex. We try to take the time to review every single application as deeply and holistically as possible. And we're doing that again now as a part of our phase 2 selection process. If you're more interested in what those criteria are, they are available on the website. So check it out underneath the phase 3 logo. Your application, though, is also being reviewed by all of the colleges on your preference list. So we're thinking about Act 6, we're thinking about program fit, but regardless of what happens with Act 6, you're still being considered for admission to all of our partner colleges. You should definitely follow up with them, connect with their admissions counselors. They love to hear from you. They're reading about your stories as well. They really hope that you'll find yourself on their campuses if you're admitted. So build that relationship too. This is the timeline for phase 3 in 2019. So these information, or this This timeline will change in the next program year. So if you're watching this and you are a junior, you can kind of block off these times in your calendar for next year, but know that they're going to be, we try to be flexible with our colleges about when they can host a phase 3 event. If you want to be an Act 6 scholar, you must attend a phase 3 event. And that's probably one of our harder rules. We've never had an Act 6 scholar who didn't attend a phase 3. So if you can't make it, if you have a family obligation, if you're going somewhere else, if you're going to be out of the country, please email us directly. Let us know where you'll be and while you'll be gone. And we'll make sure that during our selection process for all of the colleges that you have on your preference order, we take the time to align you with a phase 3 that works better for you, especially if you have more than one college on your preference list. But if like Gonzaga is your only choice and you are going to be in Europe from the 7th to the 9th, then you should definitely email us directly so we can figure something out. Phase 3 events include interviews, another essay component, a seminar, some group problem solving activities, and opportunities for you to get to know the campus. And then if you're a semifinalist, if you make it to phase 3, you're admitted to whatever college you're going to attend your phase 3 at. So if you're going to GU's phase 3, even if you don't get the Act 6 scholarship, you're being admitted to Gonzaga. We will have final decisions emailed out to everyone on February 20th, and you'll have until February 27th to accept or deny your Act 6 offer letter. Any questions before I move forward? Yeah. So we said you have until February the 7th to let us know, do you want to accept Act 6? Do you want to deny it? Just keep in mind, it's not a early decision or early action type of commitment. We really just want to know, do you see yourself on this campus? Do you see yourself as a part of this community? Are you ready to begin training? Training for us is the most important part of our program. It's the most fun. We get to bond with you. We get to learn about what your vision for the future is, and we get to learn how to support you the best. And you also learn how to support your cadre members. So we want to know who's in right before we begin training and we go on this journey together. We also hope that students and parents will get to know the campus really well. You'll have an idea of what it's like to be a student there, and we'll get to know what your passions are, why you want to be a part of the program, to see if we can all support each other. This is a relationship that you're going to be a part of between us as an organization, as a scholarship organization, a scholarship initiative, and with the university too. So a lot of moving parts, but that's why we try to give you so many opportunities to learn about Act 6, to learn about the colleges, and for us to learn about you as well. So any common questions we've gotten about selection timeline, about selection process?
Just with the commitment too, it is like a soft commitment, but at the same time knowing that like if you need to change your mind, it's better to do that earlier on so that we can give that space to another applicant.
Yeah, good point. Typically at all levels of the process, we have a couple of folks selected as alternates. So you should know that if you don't really see yourself at one of these colleges, or if you see yourself at the college but you don't want to be a part of the Act 6 program, or you don't think it's for you, that's totally fine. But please don't say yes as a placeholder, as a backup. We select so few amount of students that we'd love to be able to share this opportunity with folks who are ready to dive in. And it's okay if a couple of weeks after selection you get into Stanford and you get a full ride and you have to go to Stanford. It happens sometimes. We'll support you, but we want to be able to offer the award and the funding to someone else if we can. Anything else?
That seems good.
Yeah. The only other thing I would say is there's going to be a lot of people who get bad news, and a handful of people who get really exciting news. And for the people who get bad news, I just want to reiterate, it's nothing personal. We just have a lot of amazing students this year. This particular pool has been really, really competitive, and we've gotten more applications this year than we have in the last 2 years. So a massive amount of people who we think all will go to college and do amazing things. We will only get to select a few of you though, but it's an amazing accomplishment, especially with the level of competitiveness that Act 6 has had in the last decade to have made it to the phase 2 round. So thank you all for giving us your time and sharing your story with us. We appreciate it. All right, that concludes the seminar or the webinar. If you have more questions or questions that are really specific to you and your family situation, you can email us at apply@act6.org, and that act6.org will send your question to the right person. You can also email me directly, taylor.tibbs@degreesofchange.org, or you can email Jaden. Do you want to say your email?
My email is jaden.zwick@degreesofchange.org.
Yeah, or you can email our AmeriCorps team, mostly anyone on the local team. All of our emails and all of our faces are on the internet. So just go Google us and you'll find us, degreesofchange.org. Thanks, everybody. It's been awesome. And we'll make sure that this is available for everyone online. Ready to say goodbye before we stop recording?
All right, bye.
Bye.
Bye.